Okay, so all compound inequalities we're just really graphing the solution set to more than one inequality, okay? There are two situations. It's either when something happens and something else happens, or when one thing happens or another thing happens, okay? Now, in number one, it says or. So this is an or inequality. Who can show me what or inequalities typically look like with their arms? Right, out. We shade outwards. It's this thing or this thing. So let's go ahead and start graphing this guy. We need to solve these first, so we would subtract 1 from both sides, and that's going to leave us with n is less than or equal to, is that -4? All right, very good. So we want to graph that. Well, why don't we go ahead and solve this one before we start graphing. So -4n is less than -8. How do we get n by itself there? Perfect. And what happens when you multiply or divide both? Very good. When you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you flip your inequality symbol. So that becomes n is actually greater than 2. Are there any questions here? All right, let's graph this. What number goes on the left, -4 or 2? -4. Why -4? -4 because it's the smaller number, right? And we know on our number line, the smaller numbers go on the left. Remember number line, which let's just pretend that's an actual line. 0, and they increase as we go to the right. 1, 2, 3. Excuse me, but they decrease as we go to the left. -1, -2, -3, so on. Now, on -4, is this going to be an open circle or a closed circle? Closed, okay? And how do you know it's closed? Right, it says n is less than or equal to, so it's going to be closed. And which way are we throwing shade? To the left, right? Very good, because those numbers are smaller. Okay, and then over here on the right, we are going to open or close circle on the 2. Open, and then we shade which way? To the right, because it says n is greater than 2. So we're shading to the right. Any questions here? All right, on number 2, this is pretty much, oh, we can't move on yet. We have to do your least favorite part, and that is that we need to write this in interval notation, okay? So in order for us to write this in interval notation, that's what we did, remember, on that review where we have the brackets and the parentheses and the infinity sign and all that jazz. So let's start writing the blue part. How would I write the blue part in interval notation? Open parentheses, negative infinity, to what? Sorry, that's not supposed to be there. To what? -4. And is there a parenthesis or a bracket there? Bracket. Okay? Now, that's part of our answer, right? But there's another part of our answer. What's the other part of our answer? The orange part? Which is to infinity, right? And what we're not saying that our answer is this and this, okay? I mean, we're saying our answer can be the blue or it can be the orange. We're not saying it has to be blue and orange. Okay, so we're going to use, just one second, please. We're going to use this symbol, right? It's called a union symbol to represent the fact that our answer can either be blue or it can be orange. It's this and this, okay? Or, I'm sorry, this or this. Any number less than or equal to -4 or greater than 2 is part of our solution. So that's why we have to use that union symbol, and I did not mean to color code this because the blues and the orange are actually mixed up, but this is this part this part and this part go together, right? And then we can shade over here, this one, and this one. Does that make sense? Just kind of, it's all straight down. Yes, ma'am, what was your question? Great question. Why is the 2 not in the bracket? Who can answer that? Why is it a parentheses 2 instead of a bracket 2? Right, very, very good. There's not an equal to. This is just n is greater than, not greater than or equal to, which means 2 is not part of our solution. 2 will not work. 2 does not work. It's not an answer. However, 2.0001 is, right? But 2 is not. Now, -4 is an answer, and that's why the bracket. It's saying -4 is included. 2 isn't, but we get really close to that. Okay? Any questions here? All right, let's go on to number 2. On number 2, we would need to do what to both sides? Multiply by? Good, and that gives us k is what? Greater than or equal to 4. And then over here we can multiply by 3, and we get k is less than or equal to -3. Do I flip my inequality symbol here? No, because I didn't multiply both sides by a negative. There just happened to be a negative over here, right? Does that make sense? So now we graph this. What number goes on the left? -3. Some people really, really want to, write a 4 there just because the 4 is here and they just want to write it down there. But that's not how it works, okay? The reason -3 goes on the left is because it is a smaller number, okay? Do y'all see that? Now, if we want to graph, is this an open or a closed circle in -3? Closed circle, and we shade to the left because it's less, right? And then is this an open or a closed circle on 4? Closed circle, and we shade to the right. Very good. Now, how would I write this in set notation? I'm sorry, interval notation. Meyer, could you help me out with just that orange part? Okay. Mm-hmm. Good. 2, -3. And is that a bracket after? Good. And then what goes next? I know. Good, good. And then what goes next? Can you help me out here, DeMarcus? Good. 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 All right, guys. For the purposes of the way I'm going to represent these inequalities, if they're ever written as a single inequality, it's going to be an and inequality, okay? It implies that we want this and this to happen, okay? But sometimes we're not going to always be able to solve it without breaking it up. So we're not just going to be able to divide by 2 to all 3 sides. That would be easiest. That would be super awesome. But it's not always going to be that nice. So what I'm going to do is I am going to break this up into 2 inequalities, okay? The first one would be 2 is less than 2x. And then who can tell me what the second one would be? Good. 2x is less than 6. So what we're doing, the first one, we just cover up this to get 2x is less than 6. And then the second one, we just cover up the left side and that other inequality symbol to get 2x is less than 6. Is that cool with y'all? Okay. Now we just want to get x, and then remember this is and. And to get x by itself, we would just want to divide both sides by what? 2. Good. And that gives us 1 is less than x. And then over here, when we divide by 2, we get x is less than 3. So now we just graph this. What number goes on the left, 1 or 3? 1, and on the right would be open or closed circles. And where do we shade? Right, and it's in the middle because it says x is greater than 1 and x is less than 3. So if I color code this, where x is greater than 1 is this way. All right, in blue. And where x is less than 3 is this way. Pretend like that's a line. Where it is greater than 1 and less than 3 is where it's both blue and green. Do y'all see that? Yes? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did it.
Okay. Remember I said that you can do it differently. Did you just divide by 2, 2, 2? Right, but if you look over here on the back on problem number 15, it's not going to be so easy to do it that way. Okay, so okay, but you can do it that way on these problems for sure. Okay? So our solution is going to be in between here, right here. Correct? Those are all the values where x is going to be greater than 1 and less than 3. Are there any questions here? I'm just going to erase this part. Excuse me. So when we write this in interval notation, how would we write this? Who can tell me? Go ahead, Marcus. Bracket. Okay, you say bracket. I'm sorry, but it's actually going to be what? It's going to be a parenthesis, right? Because it's not equal to. Okay? So it would be parenthesis 1, 2, what? 3, and then another parenthesis. So it's way easier, right? Right? Are we cool with this? You want to do a few harder examples? Yeah? For those of you who are kind of wanting to work ahead, you are welcome to do so. Skip number 9 for right now. We'll come back to that, but the answers are over here on the board. I would prefer you to stay with me for just a minute while we do some of these harder problems, and then I will let you guys work on your own. But in case you're just killing it right now, I'd really like to go over number 7, though. All right, on number 7, and yes, this is another one where you can do it your way, Kennedy. But I would like to go ahead and break this up into 2 different inequalities. One being negative 33 is less than or equal to negative 7n minus 12. And then the second one would be negative 7n minus 12 is less than negative 26. So now we're just solving for our variable, right, Meyer? So we just add 12 to both sides. Hello? Okay, no problem. Question? The homework is going to be the rest of this, and you can watch this video. You can just start it, fast forward it and start at this point, okay? So we're going to add 12 to both sides. And that will give us negative 21 is less than or equal to negative 7n. And then what would we do next, Layla? Divide both sides by negative 7, good. And that gives it, what happens with that inequality symbol? Right, very good. We flip it, and that ends up giving us n is less than or equal to 3. We're going to do the same thing over here. Add 12. Then divide both sides by negative 7. And what happens to that inequality symbol again? It flips and it becomes n is greater than 2. And then we'll come down here and graph this. What goes on the left, 2 or 3? 2, 3 over here. So n is greater than 2. That means we shade which way? To the right, very good. And n is less than or equal to 3 means we shade to the left, and we know this is and, so we're just going to end up shading where? In the middle, because in the middle is where it is greater than 2 and less than 3. Any questions so far? Do we need our interval notation? 2 to 3 with a bracket? Right. Question? questions? All right, so turn over on the back. Let's look at number 17. On number 17, it wants to know when is x less than 3 or greater than or equal to negative 2. So this is negative 2, 3. Is that an open or closed circle on negative 2, Olivia? Closed, right? And we're shading which way? To the right, because it says greater, and the values to the right are greater, okay? Now look at that 3. Is that an open or a closed circle on the 3, Pate? Open. Open. And which way are we shading, Pate?
We would be shading to the left.
To the left, okay? All right, so the question is, when is x less than 3 or greater than or equal to 2? Okay, so it's saying when is it this or this. So it doesn't have to be both, but it can be this or this. For example, please stand up if you are a boy. Yes, yes, please. Or if you're a girl. Okay? And, right, you just don't feel like standing. Okay. And, of course, besides the whole, I know that some people are not gender specific, but besides that, my point is if we're standing up because we're a boy or a girl, then who's standing up? Everybody, okay? All right, thank you. You can sit down now. So that's my point. If we're shading this way, where is it on the number line? Where is it blue? Where is it blue or orange? Everywhere. Everywhere. It's either blue or orange. So how could I write that? How do I write that? How do I write it mathematically? I'm sorry? Right. But how do we say that first one? A little something you're missing on that first one. Very good. Negative infinity to infinity. It's the answer is all real numbers. It's that whole number line, and to write this in interval notation, we would say from negative infinity all the way to infinity. It's the whole number line. Anything, any number you want, throw it in there. We got you. Any number that's on the number line, of course. Okay. Any questions here? Did you have a question, Pate? Or yes, Claire. It wouldn't, because remember we can't ever say like, oh man, just ran infinity miles, you know? Does that make sense? Right. Yeah, that would be terrible. Sorry, did you have a question, Peyton? No? No, okay. All right, let's look at number 18. But please ask questions if you have them. I like them. You wanted it because we closed that circle, right? But that closed circle is included in between negative infinity and infinity, okay? So negative 4, negative 3. Negative 4, is it smaller or greater than negative 3? Smaller, so it goes on the left. Negative 3 on the right, okay? And less than negative 4 would be open and then shade to the left. Okay, and then open and greater than would be shade which way? To the right. Okay, let me use a different color so we can... Okay, so the problem with this one is it says we want to know when W is less than negative 4 and greater than negative 3. When does that happen? When is X less than negative 4 and greater than negative 3? Never. Okay, it's the empty set, or you can say no solution. Any questions? Are you ready to start working on your own? Are you sure? Okay, yes ma'am.
So going back to the bracket situation with the
Mm-hmm.
can you explain that one more time?
Absolutely. So what number are you talking about? Would you just give me an example?
Just you wanting to number one.
The brackets. Okay, let's do 1. So 1, our answer ended up being n is less than or equal to -4. And n is, it was less than, but we divided by, so it was greater than +2. Is that correct? So we know you know the number line is what you're saying. You're just saying, and then we graph it. Less than -4 goes this way, closed circle. I'm doing it really fast, sorry. That's a closed circle. Greater than 2, open circle, shade to the right. Okay, so your question is how do we write this in interval notation, right? Okay, so let's look at just the left part, this part right here. So the farthest left it goes, the lowest number that is part of our solution, what's the smallest number? We -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, -10, -11, right? But we're not. You don't want to listen to me all day. My voice is going in as it is. So how far is all the way that way? -infinity, right? So that's the lowest. We're always going left to right, small to larger. So the lowest we can go is -infinity. But then where do we have to stop? We have to stop at -4. But since n can be equal to -4, there's a bracket there. That bracket tells us -4 works, okay? If it were a parenthesis, it would mean it doesn't work, which means it's just less than, not necessarily equal to, which is what we're about to see with this 2. Now this 2 is not part of our solution. If we plug 2 in there, it's not going to work, okay? Let's look at it. -4 times 2 is what? -8. Is -8 less than -8? No, because they're equal. So that's not going to work for us. That's why there's a parenthesis or an open circle and then 2 to infinity. What I like to do is I like to solve it, graph it, and then write interval notation. Because if you have a closed circle, bracket, open circle, parenthesis, and in infinities, always have parentheses, whether it's negative or positive. Does that help? Yes. Any other questions? All right, you still have about 15 minutes left in class, and whatever you do not finish will be for homework. I do have high hopes that you will finish. The answers are written on the board over here if you want to check your answers, and that's just the interval notation.